So who's that voice in my headphones, Damashe?
Who is that voice in your headphones?
It's not you.
Thought you were talking about someone else for a second there. What am I not hearing?
I'm starting to hear voices.
Yeah, I think Mike's hallucinating. So, shout out to all of our subscribers, tip jar subscribers. No, welcome Stephen Scott. What's going on, man?
Hey, Damashe, how are you? It's so nice to be up at, what time is it? 6 a.m.?
Well, man, this was your choice.
It was, actually, yeah. I have to say, I like this time of morning because no one's up, the dogs are sleeping, no one's around, nothing's going on. There's no kids screaming outside demanding they don't go to school or whatever they do. Because I don't have kids, so I don't know how it works. Do kids go to school on a Saturday? I don't know how it works. But and
sometimes they should.
I think the parents wish that they did. I certainly do, and they're kicking the ball off my window every single day. Like, I'm absolutely one of these guys now who have become the get off my lawn type people. Sick of it.
Yeah. So it's the exact same for me, except it is 12 a.m., but nobody's up. Nothing's going on. Kids are in the bed. They're not running around screaming and playing loud music. My kids listen to the weirdest music. Like,
oh, it's terrible, isn't it?
No, it's
bang
not
bang
even
music.
Like
it's all bang bang nowadays.
No, it's not even that.
Music.
Like, they're not listening to that. They're listening to like soundtracks from movies and TV shows, and like none of it makes any sense.
At least it's not Baby Shark.
Well, yeah. It's always good to mention a song like that because then everyone starts singing it and then it's stuck in your head.
Yep, exactly.
Head all day. Yeah. But no, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, of course, nowadays kids have access to absolutely anything when it comes to music and everything else, to be honest. And, you can access any music from anywhere. And, I remember the day when I had an obsession with Whitney Houston. Don't ask. And I wanted to hear a song that she sang, which I always heard on the radio at night because they played it during the Love Hour. It was called One Moment in Time, which was a great song by Whitney Houston. Excellent vocal range. And I wanted to hear it. I wanted to listen to it when I wanted to listen to it. And I couldn't because I couldn't find it on a CD. I don't think it had been released yet. It wasn't on cassette tape either. If there's any people under the age of 30 listening to this, do Google that. It was a real thing. And basically, I had to wait until it played on the radio. And I remember standing in a store, in a Walmart equivalent in the UK, standing in a store saying, one day, this is me standing in front of the CDs and tapes at the time, saying, one day I want to be able to pick all the songs I want off all these CDs and make my own kind of, list of some kind of all the songs I want to hear. Not the ones they tell me I need to listen to on that CD, which means I need to buy 15 different CDs to get the songs I want. I want to make my own list. And everyone thought I was insane because I was obviously shouting rather loudly in a Walmart type store. So that was enough reason for people to pause. But nowadays you just ask a smart speaker. It's wild, isn't it? It's just so weird how things have changed in a very short space of time, actually, or what feels like a very short space of time. Maybe it's not really.
And all of that music, it either fits in your pocket or you don't even have to have it in your pocket. As you said, just shout out to a smart speaker. You can be
but then it doesn't hear what you said right, and then it plays some weird music you never heard of.
Or what's even worse is, if you listen to, say, an older band or an older artist, like for a long time I was a big fan of Neil Sedaka. I've got a very weird music taste, don't ask. And I think I've got my dad's music taste. I think that's what it is. I grew up listening to things like Neil Sedaka, the Eagles, Carpenters, all those kind of bands and songs, and that's what was in my house all the time. And so that's what kind of began my musical journey towards whatever the hell that became. And I remember all these, and I remember now, I go to, say, an Apple Music, I say, play some Neil Sedaka, and it plays what can only be described as Neil Sedaka's third removed cousin, who's come in to sing the hits of Neil Sedaka, because Neil Sedaka, frankly, has had enough.
Yep.
And, it's this horrible... I remember the Drifters came on once. I love the Drifters. And, it felt like, the cleaners who'd come in to clean the studio had thought, let's have a go at recording a Drifters song. And then they posted that on Apple Music because that was about what it sounded like. It was badly recorded. It was session singers. And, that's another problem. They used to call, I remember, was it K-Tel Records was a thing back in the day? Am I old? But there was a thing in the day called K-Tel Records, which was like, it wasn't songs by the artists. It was songs by people inspired by the artists, right? So session singers, in other words. And they used to be known here as K-Tel. Everyone called them K-Rap because they were crap, right? So they just called it K-Rap because it was so bad. But yeah, things, as I say, have changed. Not always in a good way, but, I suppose they've got access to everything now. They can sit and listen to a soundtrack from a 50s movie 1 minute and then the latest hit from insert current singer here.
Who it is? Like, who is this person? I have no idea. Yeah. We're definitely getting up there. I don't know if I don't like some of the newer music because I'm old and that's just what happens when you get old, or if it's really crap. I personally think it's crap, but
there's sometimes a song will come along and you listen to the radio and you think that's quite good. Or
yeah,
there's a song came out recently. I really like Lady Gaga and I really like Bruno Mars, and they did a song together called, I can't even remember. It's called "Die with a Smile." It's a cheery little song, and it's brilliant. It's such a great song, and I don't listen to radio for music very often, because I think, well, if I want to listen to music, I'll listen to what I want to listen to. I don't really want to hear about some person who I don't know has decided I should listen to. Kind of back to the old CD variety thing. When you buy a compilation CD, you're kind of stuck with what they gave you, and you'd maybe like 5 of the 12 songs on one CD. But that's changed now. Of course, you can pick what you want. But when I do put the radio on, sometimes I do think, my God, what a racket. Usually I'm in a taxi, and the driver's got the radio on some hit station. And I always think, why does a guy who's 50 years old want to listen to songs for the youth? I don't understand this. I think that people need to be questioned more about their life choices. And so, I think, for me, it's like it must be a podcast or talk radio. If you once you go from 40 to 50, that your radio should just default to talk radio. I think that should be the rule.
That's an interesting thought. I was just sitting here thinking about questioning the Uber driver's choice in music. Like, why are you listening to this? Like, do you realize you're yada, yada, yada? Oh, here, we're at your stop now.
Well, I do it by saying, do you realize you're giving me a huge headache? Because, look, I mean, I suppose there's 2 options, right? Either I listen to the Bang Bang music or I talk to the Uber driver. And this
There's
is why
always
I've
a
chosen...
third option. There's always a third option.
Well, there is a third option, which I've chosen, which is Uber Comfort. Because in Uber Comfort, you can choose quiet preferred. In other words, nobody speaks and the music's off. It's heaven.
Okay, I'm gonna have to try that because my third option was like, okay, I'm gonna stick an earbud in and like I don't hear any of this, and I'll listen to a podcast because I'm old.
It's cheaper.
So
I'll
listen to a
admit that,
podcast.
that's a cheaper way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, but Uber Comforts are nice, and I've gotten to a point now that I don't like doing Uber X's because now I've been fortunate a lot of times here recently that I've had to take a lot of Ubers that I'll call a Uber X because I'm being cheap, and I'll still get a big vehicle, but I've gotten to a point I don't want to ride in small cars anymore because it's slightly terrifying at this point. So I have been doing a lot of Uber XLs. I've been skipping Comfort because I really didn't know what Comfort meant. But I'm going to try that next time because they're cheaper than XL.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. I mean, is that because you're American and you're 10 feet tall? You can't fit in a small car?
No. It's because of that car accident, man. Like, I don't want to ride in anything small because if I get hit again, I don't want it to fold up like a tin can.
Oh, no, it's so... Well, it's not funny you say that because, of course, that's not humorous. But it is interesting you say it because I was in a car accident in 2021, and basically what happened was we were driving on the fast lane of the motorway, on the outside lane, as we call it over here. I don't know what you guys call it, but the fast lane, right?
Yep, same thing here.
And all of a sudden the taxi driver shouts, brace, and I, brace for what? And I'm used to that in planes, right? I mean, well, I say I'm used to it in planes. It hasn't happened to me in a plane, thank goodness. But, I'd expect
You expect it
to
on
hear
a
that in
plane. Yeah.
Yeah.
In all my plane traveling experience, 5 times they've shouted brace. It's been fine. But no, in the car, right? He shouts brace, and so I'm like, brace for what? And then the next minute, we smashed into the back of whatever was in front of us, and then he shouted brace again because a car plowed into the back of us from behind, and then another one behind that, and it just was like a bum bum bum, and he had tried to pull out into the middle lane to try and avoid the crash, but he couldn't. And the problem was that he actually pulled out into the middle lane, so kind of straddling both the outside lane and the middle lane. And then a truck was coming up the middle lane and smashed the side of the car.
Oh, jeez.
And took the wing mirror mostly and some of the front off the car. Because it was obviously the only option that he would have had or she would have had driving that would be to swerve out the way entirely and no doubt kill everyone else on the road. So they navigate as they do in trucks. They're obviously very smart people. But yeah, it was an unbelievable experience, right? As you know yourself, an unbelievable experience, and it shocked me. Now I was always someone who was confident in a car. Loved going out, loved getting usually jumped a taxi because, I preferred that to buses and trains.
Yep.
And it stopped me going out. It just stopped me going anywhere, especially on that motorway. I couldn't do it. And I realized I had to, because if I didn't, I would never go out again. And thankfully, the year later, they had put on a bus service to get into the city, which was the first time they'd ever done that from the village I live in. So they now have a bus service that takes you into the city. And I felt way more comfortable on that because it's a big coach. And like you, I'm thinking, you know what, if the worst happens here? And I was just saying this to someone yesterday. I was telling someone this very story. It's so funny you bring this up. Because I was saying to someone yesterday, I'm not comfortable in a car, but I will get on a coach because I think, well, worst case, okay, I know it's bigger things could happen, but equally, we're probably going to be okay in this. And that's my rationale. But it does shake you, doesn't it?
It does, and what's interesting is like I'm in the same position that you were in. Like I really don't want to get in cars anymore. But the ironic thing about that is I run a vending machine business. So guess what I got to do? Get in a car or get in a van and go around and put stuff in vending machines. So I kind of can't just sit on the couch and be like, all right, let me deal with this in my own time. It's like, no. Otherwise, that business blows up in my face, right? So I had to get back out there a whole lot sooner than I know I was ready. But we do what we must. We do what we must.
And are you okay now? Wait, when did it happen to you?
Happened at the end of May.
Jeez, that was recent. Okay.
Yeah, it was super recent. And like I was back in the van on the road probably 2 weeks after that, just because I kind of didn't have a choice.
Yeah, it's so. I mean, look, being in a car it can be terrifying enough. And I don't know about you, but I think since lockdown was lifted, and I think since the pandemic, driving has just got worse. I think people's driving. It's probably the smartphone. It's all the smartphone, right? They're all too busy trying to text their friends.
Man, no, what it is. So I'm not going to even blame it on the texting because that was happening before the pandemic. I blame it on TikTok because I have ridden with people, and they have their phone propped up on the dashboard or whatever, and they have TikTok going while they're driving.
But watching TikTok.
Yes.
Well, I guess they're listening and kind of glancing at it like I don't know what they. And that's kind of the unnerving part. And I've said this to a couple of people, like it's not just a car accident, but it's like I didn't see any of this coming. Nobody yelled brace for me, which may or may not have helped, but like there was no warning whatsoever. And now I'm like, I have no idea what you're doing, right? Even if you're not playing TikToks on your phone and you're just driving down the road, like are you focused on what you should be focused on, or are you looking at something else, right? So like it's more nerve wracking, I think, being blind because you can't see you can't backseat drive people. Like all you can do is just kind of hope for the best and try to ride in something bigger. So at least if there is an accident, you don't just fold up like so I don't know what the small cars over like a Mini or something like that in the UK, like those types of cars or what we have here most of the times with a lot of people is like Honda Civics, Nissans, little small compact cars or smaller sedans. I don't like those anymore. One, they're very low to the ground, and two, they're thin sheet metal compared to something like, and I never was like I gotta be in a big SUV giant honking tank looking thing. Like, but now I'm like, can I buy an actual tank? Like, I mean, the government's, they may sell me one.
You can keep the armor, or not the armor, but the weapons. I just want the tank itself.
Yeah, look, I want the turrets and all that removed. Just let me get the tank.
Take that big cannon thing off the front of it, and
take that off.
You'll be fine.
Yeah, definitely take that off, and I'll be fine. But it's interesting. It is something I had never experienced. Like, I've been in like little small fender benders where somebody's not paying attention and they kind of tap your rear end at the light or stop sign. Like, that's whatever. But yeah, this was a whole. If we would have been in one of those, we fortunately were in an older car, so it was a little more sturdily built. So we didn't fold up like a tin can. But I just think about it, had I been in like a 2015-ish, one of these Honda Accords or something like that, like I might not even be sitting here talking to you.
Yeah, but you know what? You gotta move on from it, right? Because otherwise you end up. That's exactly how I felt.
A basket case, like you just end up as a basket case, like you're just stuck in the house, not afraid not to go anywhere. And like I said, like I really didn't have a choice because my wife too was in the hospital, right? I had to see about my business. I had to see about my kids. So like I couldn't just sit here. So you just kind of grit your teeth and push forward and just hope for the best is about all you can do.
It's always the kids, isn't it? It's always those kids.
Look, I sent mine as soon as I could. I got my mother over here from Georgia. I was like, okay, you get to keep the kids for the summer because, I can't do it.
Yeah. But it's interesting. And it's funny because I was mentioning when we were talking about it yesterday, I was just chatting with a guy on the bus. We were talking about it in the moment. And we were chatting about the fact that it is so easy nowadays, and it would be so easy to become a hermit, someone who just doesn't leave the house, because everything comes to you.
Everything can come to you. I mean, going back to the music conversation, you don't need to go out to buy your music. It's all streaming. You can get that. You can get Uber Eats or whatever food delivery service you want. You can get grocery store deliveries. Like, you don't have to leave your house.
No.
And like the first week, everything was delivery. Like the kids were loving it because they were getting pizza and with like all kinds of just junk just delivered from Walmart and Pizza Hut, or no, they like Domino's. Because I was like, I can't. Well, actually, I was a little too hurt to be trying to go anywhere anyway. But
yeah, of course.
But it is very easy to become a hermit, like you said, and just stay at home. And even, you can make a living staying at home. Like, you can get on your computer and work remotely in a lot of jobs. I mean, one of the jobs that I still do is a remote job, so I don't have to go anywhere. But that's not a way for me to live. And two, you got to get out around people. You got to get out and do stuff. And there are times you have to get out. And with this vending business, for me especially, like, there's no way I could just sit at home, because sending people out to just run your business for you, like, and you're not getting hands on and staying on top of what's going on, like, that is a plan for failure.
Delegating, I quite like that idea. I mean, I would much rather give all my work to Sean.
I like it, but you still have to verify that they're doing what they're doing, right? Like, you got to make sure. Like, I mean, look, delegating. Like, look, I delegated the editing responsibilities when we started technically working to Mike. Like, I have not edited the show in probably 3 years.
Yeah,
that's a damn
disgrace. It's been something like that. I know. He needs to get back in to use some Reaper.
Yeah, because Reaper, I'm all in.
Yeah, how's that going for you, Steven?
Don't ask. I really need to learn this thing.
How's it going for Sean?
I'll tell you what I'm king at: procrastination. I can come up with a million reasons not to do something and take hours to do that. I could probably have learned, I don't know, Sanskrit in the time that I've wasted doing absolutely nothing. I sit here and I think to myself, I come up with all these things I want to do, and then I complain that I have no time to do it. And then I realize I've just wasted 3 hours. How is that
complaining that you had no time?
Yeah. And I think we all do that. I think we're very good at complaining about, oh, this is not good enough, and, oh, if only I had more of this. It's like, yeah, well, just do it.
So I was listening. I was listening to one of the more recent episodes of Double Tap. And
my apologies.
No, man, you guys are doing good. We're gonna talk about that a little bit too. But I was listening to this episode, and it's not the first time you've touched on this on Double Tap. And me and Mike have talked about this too on our show. But You're talking about like, oh well, we always take time to try to get the perfect setup. It's like, yeah, I could do all this stuff, I could produce these shows and produce this content, but first I got to get the perfect microphone. I got to rebuild the office because I don't like the way this works. All these cables are tangled up over here. I got to tear all that apart and put it back together because I don't like it. It's like, well, just
get on with it.
It's just procrastination, right? Sometimes it's very funny, but sometimes procrastinating on a thing actually ends up benefiting you. And I can't think of the most recent time this happened, but every time it happens to me, I'll point it out to Mike. I was like, see, procrastination saved us again.
I like this. Tell me examples.
I'm trying to think of some right now. There was something I was procrastinating on, and then somebody fixed the problem. It's like, oh, I don't even have to do that anymore because they came out with this thing. I was like, oh.
That's great. So if you wait long enough, someone else will do it. That's a bit like the dishwasher in this house, I think. That's I don't do anything, and then miraculously, it's done.
Oh, man. Yeah.
I love how you guys are not touching that. I just love how you guys are like, I'm not going there. I'm not touching that.
See, I'm not touching it because...
You know I'm right.
I shouldn't say it. Well, see, no, because sometimes it's the other way around. It's like I'm the person who like ends up having to do the thing because somebody's like,
but we're really bad though at this. We're really bad because I do this when I do it, and of course we share the load, right? But when I do things, I have to stop my wife from doing whatever she's doing to tell her to come to the kitchen to see my work. Come, look, I've done a thing. I fixed it. It's beautiful. The kitchen's clean. And I have to tell her this. And she says, yeah, that's fantastic. That's what I do all the times you don't, which is most of the time.
But you're busy making content and planning for making the content, right? So you don't have time to do all that, man.
Or as my wife calls it, talking and pressing buttons. Yeah, that's all I do.
Well, look, man, like you're doing good. You're doing
You entertain people, too, because they keep coming back.
Exactly.
I think people just love punishment. I think that's what it is. I think they obviously enjoy the punishment of the show. It's funny. You're so right, though, about the setup thing, because there was something I had to do. It's something as inane as sending an email. And, I'm like, I'll use my laptop. But, that desk's got stuff on it. So, I mean, what I need to do is move the stuff off the desk so I can put the laptop on it, and then I'll feel comfortable. But actually, hang on a minute. If I have a laptop on the desk, I don't really like the laptop keyboard. So what keyboard should I use with it? I mean, if I get that keyboard out, and this is literally what's going through my mind. And of course, what's happened? The email's never been sent. If you ever wonder why you email me and you never hear back, this is why. Because I'm deciding which...
He's browsing Amazon to find a new keyboard to buy to go with the laptop to work in this particular situation.
Let's go shopping. That's usually my first thought. Let's go shop. Let's go buy something to solve this problem. And it's like dressing up on a night out. You're like, what will I wear? What shirt is nice with this suit? What shoes? And it's this whole thing. And honestly, I think it's partly, if I'm honest, down to the very issue I was talking about. There's just too much time, actually. There's more time. And there's less time and there's more time. Because what I find is I get exhausted very easily these days doing a lot of the stuff I do. I don't mean so much in the show. I mean, the show does require an amount of energy to do. You can't be just sitting there. I mean, as much as I make out, and I am often eating something in the background, or, slurping coffee or whatever, as much as that's true, you have to be on it. You have to be thinking. You have to be aware of time and what you're doing, and if you're bringing in interviews or you've got a guest, you've got to scrub up, and you've got to make sure the studio is looking right, and you've got to think about all these things and make sure you've hit the record button, and just do all the things you have to do. It's a lot. Look, it's not. I get in. I remember when I had more vision. I used to get in the taxi in the morning to go to work at RNIB in Glasgow, and the car would, in the morning pass people who were out in the pouring rain digging up the road, and I'm thinking, I'm complaining that I have to drink a coffee in an air-conditioned studio whilst musing over the morning newspapers. God, what a life! The guy outside is going, really? Obviously it's not that, but it is a different kind of... It's mental pressure, right? It's you're using your brain. And then, of course, we come off the show, we've got to edit the show, we've got to prepare the show, we've got to do all these things. And
And you have a
You know,
time crunch, right? Like you
we
have a
do.
time
Yeah.
crunch in a way that a lot of people don't, because and you're doing daily, so like it's a repeating cycle every day. I think a part of it too that I have noticed, especially since starting to do this vending business, because it's a lot easier to do, consulting, remotely, or put up products on AT guys and talk to customers. That can be taxing too. But doing when you're in charge, or you're mostly responsible for the decision making and what direction we go in, like that is more mental effort that you're putting in, as opposed to somebody just gives you a script and said, hey, you show up, do this thing, and then you're done, right? Like that's a little less response. It's still work, but it's less work than it is to decide, okay, well, I have 7 interviews in the can. What do I want to play? When do I want to play this in? Does it make sense to play it in? I got to keep the show on topic somewhat, because we got 54 minutes to get this episode in, and I still got to play this stuff in. I got to do all of this. It's a lot more decision making that's happening, and it is taxing. And like you, like I find myself exhausted sometimes at the end of the day. It's like I just need to take a nap. Like I just want a nap, and I can get up and go do something else after that, but I got to get a nap. If I don't get a nap, I'm just dragging through the rest of that day until it's time to go to bed after a certain point.
Yeah, the Europeans have got it right. Have a siesta in the middle of the afternoon, have a couple of hours, and then continue your day. And there's a reason why most people in the Mediterranean live longer than the rest of us, because they've got a bit more of a chilled out approach to life, and they eat more fruit and vegetable as well. Two things I've never heard about in Scotland. Doesn't exist. In fact, salad is my safe word. That's how little we use it. But honestly, it's been so interesting. My favorite shows, and I love all of them. I do. I genuinely love what I do. But I do have favorite shows, and my favorite ones are when I have friends on for the hour, like Michael over here comes on and does his Ask Us Anything, because that means I don't have to do anything. He can just he talks, and it's great. But I can just hang out, right? Or the email shows where we just go through the inbox. I love them because they feel so relaxed and they feel so chilled. The hardest shows for me to do, and I enjoy them, but the hardest shows I do are the ones where we have lots of elements going on in the show, or lots of things I need to hit on the way through. So there's lots of news, and I love it because I thrive on that, and I thrive on it in a different way to when I worked in actual news. When I was working in a newsroom, it was very different. Everything was happening in the moment. You were running off adrenaline all the time. That's not quite the same here, but it just means you have to really focus. And it's almost like you're really stretching your brain. You're really exercising your brain when you're doing a show like that, because there's so much you need to think about, get into the show, make sure it works. I mean, those shows don't come along as much because in our world, breaking news isn't every day.
Right.
So you're not going to find, every single day HumanWare drop a new thing and then tomorrow another new thing. It's not like that. So, there are periods of it. And when you look at the mainstream tech, there's a lot more breaking news going on. But what I've noticed in the news cycle nowadays is a lot of it is just conjecture. You think, how many stories have we read about the new iPhone 17? And it's like, nobody knows until it's launched what this thing's going to be. I mean, I would love it one year if Apple just turned around and said, yeah, we don't have a new phone this year. See you next year. I'd love that. I would laugh my ass off.
Me too.
Awesome.
Me too. I'm
It'd
waiting. I'm honestly
brilliant.
waiting for it. I am waiting for the WWDC where they come out and one of the first things they say is, so there's no new software. We're just gonna keep working on, Mac OS 28 or whatever, and iOS 28, and there's no new phones either. So, have a nice summer, developers. Take a vacation.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be great?
Man,
I remember. So
I would do a
over
TikTok.
here-
Look, if they do that, I will do a TikTok. I will set up a TikTok account and get on there and do a TikTok just so the world can hear me laugh myself off.
I am over here. We have Radio 4, which I'm sure you've heard of if you've not listened to. And Radio 4 is like it's kind of known over in the UK as the radio station for blind people, and because a lot of blind people often used to be regarded that blind folk just sat and listened to Radio 4 all day, because it's a news talk station, and that is being very liberal about the description. It is everything. I mean, it is almost like the World Service, but boiled into the UK. It has programs on everything. You could be listening to a program about economics and then fishing, like instantly afterwards. I mean, it's a very diverse playlist of content, very much for an older age group. and very interesting. Shows like The Archers, which is a popular radio soap opera. That's still a thing in the UK. And, we've
Oh, well,
got
there
that
you go,
going.
Mike. There's a new drama for you to listen to.
There you are. I mean, The Archers has been on for I don't know how many decades. It's been on. It's been around forever. A daily radio soap opera. I mean, wow, right? And so this station has it doesn't have any jingles. It doesn't have any da 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 da. None of that stuff. It's just a literal all talk based and very very serious and very BBC. And I remember hearing as a clip that had been recorded from I think it was the 70s, and the newsreader comes on and he says, "It's the BBC News at 4:00. Today, there is no news. Goodbye." And that was it. He just left. And I'm like, we need more of this. Can we get that? Because I feel, 24-hour news? Really? There's really 24 hours worth of news to watch every day? No, there isn't.
No, like you said, it's a lot of speculation and people trying to make what really has kind of, in my opinion, damaged a lot of reporting in general from a lot of places, in the mainstream tech especially, is the move to web advertising, right? Like that's advertising on the web has gotten worse and worse. And from the perspective of a lot of these news organizations, their rates are much, much lower. So they're plastering 27 ads on one article on a website. If you want to just go read the page, like you got so many ads. There's an ad every 37 words that they've embedded. And they have to write this hype stuff, or they have to write all these speculations about. They take one little piece of news, Tim Cook said, I don't know, what did Tim Cook say recently? Apple's quarterly earnings just happened recently. So they made X amount of money and services were up this much. And we're going to get probably for the next month a lot of people trying to tear apart how damaging to Apple's services business is it going to be if they lose this Google $20 billion a year deal. And from every single angle, just because they have to write something, because they got to have something to put the ads up against. It's not that they have something necessarily to say. It's they just have to have some content to put advertising up against so those ads can be presented or read or played in.
Yeah, it's all for clicks. I mean, they have to make money, right? And so in order to chase the dollar, they have to come up with something for you to read. And of course, the problem is a lot of it is nothing. A lot of it is nothing. A lot of it is lazy journalism. I don't blame the journalists. I think there's a lot of people trying to keep a job, to be perfectly honest. But I think it's difficult and it is damaging. I'd rather go on air with some news. There's always thoughts, and we obviously we join in the rumor debate to some degree, but not as much as others. I do occasionally have people come on and say, "Oh, can we talk about the iPhone, whatever, or can we talk about this?" And well, what's to say? A new phone will emerge in September, and it will be absolutely 100% guaranteed
the best phone ever.
1,000% better than the last one.
Yeah,
right. That's all you need to know.
Best they ever made.
Yeah, it'll have a better camera. It'll have a better screen. It'll have fancy colors, and people might care.
Well,
and it'll have more AI.
You're
more
going
AI.
Going a little far on those
what?
fancy colors. We don't get all those fancy colors with Apple stuff.
Fancy colors. Well, I don't know. I think Apple might have run out of ink at its printers. There's not a lot of color going on at the moment. I think they could do with some more proper color going on. It's like an HP printer over there they've got, clearly. And not a LaserJet either. But, it makes it brilliant for me, actually, because the show we do, because people say to me all the time, the most common thing I get asked is, how do you do this every day? And the answer is actually really simple. Because we have a huge community of people who are sending in emails, sending in content, who are driving the conversation. I'm doing my bit to facilitate that. And that allows for a great conversation to happen, for a great debate to happen over several days, over several weeks. And that helps fuel what the show is. It's not a news show, but we do news. It's not a review show, and I never really wanted it to be a review show because I felt there were a lot of review shows out there that were doing stuff. There was podcasts, there were YouTube shows, there was other stuff going on. Lots of people doing reviews. And reviews, they're so difficult to get right. They really are. They're so difficult to get right because the problem with a review is that I might have an opinion on something that I think, oh, this is the best thing ever. It just takes one person to say, but actually it can't do this. And it's really crucial. And I didn't pick up on it. And suddenly it's like, oh, yeah, this is the worst product ever. So it's very difficult with reviews. So what I prefer to do is hear people talk about their experiences, give the platform to the audience and say, you tell me what you're using. You tell me your thoughts. And then we'll collectively discuss it. Now, I have to tell you, you might have noticed on the show there's a few sponsors appeared.
I've noticed that, and I commented to Mike. It's like, Mike, you didn't tell me they got sponsors. They got sponsors. Like, I'm happy that you got sponsors, and I want to talk about like how that process came about.
Well, look, I have a rather obsessive keyboard spending habit, and someone's got to pay for it. So that was basically it. No, what happened was we said, look, let's, Double Tap. We have been on AMI in Canada, Accessible Media Inc., for coming up for 8 years now, which is amazing. And they have been so supportive of us, and they have been wonderful, and they are wonderful, and they support us hugely. But AMI's reach is Canada, and that's their focus because that's where the funding is.
Right.
And so for Double Tap to, as I believe it to be, and it is becoming, by evidence, in my view, an international product. It's listened to by people all around the world. And I don't just mean we, pop onto a website and there's stats that say, someone is listening to us.
We get that
whatever.
from the emails, right? Because
Exactly,
I've listened and we've heard emails from and recordings from people all over the world, the U.S., the U.K., Australia. You guys are
Africa.
global.
I mean, Kenya. I don't know. We seem to have a following in Nairobi at the moment. How this pops up, I don't quite know. I imagine it's usually down to the fact that we interview people from around the world and those conversations permeate into communities.
Yeah.
And we just, and the blind community, right? Wherever we are in the world, it's not true that we all know each other, but we will talk to each other and we'll share things of interest. So someone will say, oh, have you heard this thing called Double Tap? And, they'll go off and either listen to it, love it, think it's okay, or hate it and never come back. But the point is, it's there, and people find out about it by having those conversations. Very hard to market to that because, first off, you need a ridiculous amount of money. And how would you market it? And what would be the right way to market it? So, there are ways, I think, to get a podcast like what we do out there, and YouTube show as well. And so what we looked at was we have AMI Audio who are supporting us and keeping us basically alive every day to do this thing and allowing it to exist. But can we take it further? And so we went to AMI and we said, look, we'd love to do something. And they said, look, it's your show. It's because we without getting into the weeds on how it all works, but basically we license the show to AMI, right? So it's our show. We own it. And we own the IP, we own the name, we own all of that stuff. And because of that, we're able to take the show and monetize it externally outside of Canada. And we're doing it actually in Canada as well because of the way that podcasting works. You can geo-log, but of course we don't want to do that.
Yeah,
so
easier.
Yeah, I mean, obviously if you're listening to us on AMI Audio, you're not going to hear the ads, you're not going to hear sponsorship, you're not going to hear any of that stuff because AMI Audio's the sponsor, right? Essentially.
Right.
But outside of that, on the podcast and on the YouTube channel, we are, open for business. So we've got sponsors on there. We have ads running on there too. Through an affiliation we have with the Los Angeles Tribune, which is an amazing story. We were approached by Los Angeles Tribune newspaper to join their podcast network. And this would, in a way, begin the process of us being able to bring in monetization for the show through advertising. And the whole purpose of this was to stop the need to go to the audience and say, could you help us out? Because we didn't want to get to a stage, and we don't want to get to a stage where we have to ask the audience to pay. I have real issues paying or asking, not paying for, but asking my audience to pay for the show. I love the show and I believe in it and I 100% stand by what we do, and I think it needs to exist. But should someone who is in a position where they may not have a job, they may not be able to access this content because they can't pay for it. Should that person be left out of these, I think, really important conversations that we have, and becoming more important actually by the day? And I don't think that's fair. I think that there are times when entertainment, and some say Double Tap is entertainment, and I think it is that as well. We try to entertain people in what we do, but I think it goes a bit deeper than that in our community. So I want to make sure we can get that content to as many people as possible. I read every email. I read every email, and the amount we get from people who say, I live alone, or I live with a family, or my wife or my husband, no one gets it. I'm blind. I'm stuck. You're the only people who get this. Or, I would never have touched technology had you guys not talked about it. Or I've never tried this website. Never even tried going online until, all these stories come in all the time. And there's loads of them. And I think I just cannot turn around to those people and say, okay, that's great. $10 a month, please. Yeah. Now, look, I have to be honest. I also have to caveat that by saying if sponsorship fell away, if AMI Audio says, okay, it's been great, but, time to move on, I can't deny we're going to have to do something for the show to continue because we might not survive otherwise. And we have to have a serious conversation. But I will do that with the audience. We'll have that conversation with the audience, and they will decide. The way I will do it is, I kind of know in my head how I'll do it, which is to say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to open up a subscription model, and you need to pay this for the show to exist. So you can have it. You need to pay this amount of money per month, let's say. And then the reaction to that will tell me if the show's got worth or not. Now, it's a hard measurement because there's people who might want to pay for it and can't afford to pay for it. So those people lose out. But I have to look at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
We've all got to feed our families. And this is a hard world. And so it's either that or we all go and do something else. So at the moment, there's no sense of that. So, please, if you're listening and think, oh, God, here we go, we're moving toward, we're not. I'm not wanting to ask people for money. The whole purpose of what I'm doing is the exact opposite. I'm trying to avoid asking people for money. What I want people to do is get easy access to the content we provide. That's why when we started off the second, we've got a second podcast now, because of course, you can never have enough. So we started up Double Tap Extra, which was kind of built with a different idea in mind way back. Many people might remember I did a show years ago called Blind Guy Talks Tech. And people still talk to me about that show today. I mean, it was only on for 7 months, and people still mention it. I mean, some people I remember once I got an email from Apple saying it was, one of the most listened to podcasts in this assistive technology space.
It was a good show.
And I'm like,
that's how I found you.
I was only on for 7 months. It was literally the reason that show existed was because I needed a reason to get out of bed in the morning when I left RNIB. I thought I need to get out of bed in the morning at a decent time and keep some structure in my life. I can't get up every day at noon and start thinking, what am I doing here? I had to get structure. And so I said to Sean, let's just do something. Let's just do a show every day. Of course, he was like, whatever. Because we were talking in the morning anyway. It's like you guys, right? You just get together, you talk, and suddenly you've got a show. And obviously it was different because it was podcast, right? So it was the first time I'd ever done a podcast because my whole life was broadcast and still is to some degree. Because in broadcast, you have time limits. You have rules, you have regulations you've got to follow. There's lots of things involved. You can't just open a mic and say anything you want. You have to think within the confines of the rules, the laws of either the country you're broadcasting to or, the country you're in. There's specific speech laws, for example, in Scotland where I live, that if I said certain things on the air, even though the show is not broadcast from Scotland, it's broadcast from Canada, I would get in trouble for. So there's things that I need to be aware of. There's rules, there's laws. So you could argue the same is true of podcasting, but I think it's different. I think podcasting, you can be a lot more free and easy. And obviously with timing as well. With timing, I was able to just say, do you know what? It doesn't matter what time it is or how long this show is. It could be 15 minutes one day. It could be an hour the next. It could be whatever. And it worked. And I loved doing it. It was a lot of fun. We had amazing people on that show. We laughed. I mean, I probably haven't laughed as much in a long time. I loved it. It was a real joy to do. And I think I needed it mentally. I think I needed that show because I needed to be around other blind people at that time. And so it gave me that ability to almost be part of the group, but be distant enough to manage my own emotions at the time.
Yeah.
And so I got through that, and then the great Mr. F came for lunch, and he and I and Sean sat around a table, and we suggested, well, it was a bit of a joint, let's have a thought about what we could do with Double Tap going forward. And he said, if I said to him actually, if it was daily, how would you feel about that? And he was like, what? Daily? Which was not the response I was expecting, to be honest. I was expecting, absolutely, sign me up. But what? 5 days? I think it was 6 days at the time. And I said, yeah, well, why not? And I explained to him we were doing this thing called Blind Guy Talks Tech. We were kind of doing it anyway. And he said, okay, let's fold it in. And therefore, Double Tap Daily was born. And it's grown massively.
Exponentially. You guys are doing video, which is something me and Mike have talked about, and we just made a decision not to do video because of some of the things you said. And I'm a big procrastinator because I'm a perfectionist, right? Like, you have to make sure like I said, you got to make sure your studio's looking good. You got to ensure that, you hadn't bumped your camera and knocked it off and now your YouTube video is skewed, like all that sort of stuff. And like, I feel like for us, because of where we're at, to grow our audience, it just makes more sense to focus on the audio. But you guys were audio for a long time, and now you're doing video, which I think also has helped grow your reach, because I'm pretty sure that algorithm on YouTube recommends your show because people are watching other content that's related.
Yeah. There's no surprise, or maybe not surprise, but there was no secret to the fact that I did not want to do it on YouTube. I really did not want to do it, and I was quite against it at the start. And Mr. F said to me, look, I think it would be good for the show. I mean, it's where it's at. YouTube is where it's at.
It is.
And my argument was, yeah, but not for blind people. But I was thinking very narrowly at the time, and I realized I was thinking narrowly because I spoke to some people who said, yeah, that's great for blind people. I understand what you're saying. But they're covered with the podcast. They've got an option, right? I'm not saying blind people wouldn't watch it on YouTube, but if you are blind, you're probably likely to, I would say, unless you're low vision. And again, you've got to make the distinctions here. If you're totally blind, you're probably going to choose the audio podcast version. It's the path of least resistance.
No.
Well, I think it depends on who you are, right?
There are
I
a
think there's
ton
some
of
people who will do that.
There are a ton of people that, and the reason, like, we put our show on YouTube, we just don't have video. We just put up a piece of artwork. But it's because there are a lot of blind, and I've heard from them, like, they listen to their podcast on YouTube. It doesn't matter if it's a video podcast or audio podcast. YouTube is their podcast player.
That's interesting to me, and I hadn't really considered that at all.
Me either, until a couple of people told me that, and then I listened to, actually, Mr. F was talking about it when he went to, Mike, what's that conference?
I think it was one of the podcast movement.
Yeah. And he came back and he was like, "Video is the future. Everything is going to YouTube." Yeah, and like, he had that conversation. I was like, "Man, that's nuts. I'm not. Nobody cares about YouTube." But I've heard from too many blind people. I've heard from too many people in general, but I've heard from a larger number of blind people than I would have expected to say, "Oh yeah, I listen to podcasts on YouTube." I mean, even a very good friend of mine, and at this point, I think we were probably been friends nearly as long as me and Mike have. And she listens to all of her, and she's a relatively tech savvy individual. She does video content. She's a speaker. So she's not one of these people that doesn't know how to set up Overcast or Pocket Cast or whatever. But she told me one day, "Oh yeah, I listen to all my podcasts on YouTube." I was like, "What do you mean? What is wrong with you?"
I don't get it.
I don't either.
I genuinely don't get it. It's not my thing. But again, my thinking was more around, like I say, would blind people get access to it, and then, of course, blind people were already getting access to it through the podcast, and so that was my kind of that was my full stop thinking there. But then I thought about, well, okay, there is another side to this, which is the audience who are not blind, and perhaps we keep talking about attitudes and public attitudes towards blind people, and there's not enough of us out there, and it's like, well, actually, maybe this could contribute something. Maybe this could be useful for blind people to hear. No offense to anyone, I don't mean this way, but there's so many influencers out there who are trying to sell their story of blindness, of whatever it might be on the internet. And I think, good for them and they're doing great stuff. But it's a very polished version and a very specific view of things in the world. And I feel that one thing that's missing often is the difficult stuff, really hard stuff, and the conversations that actually happen between blind people. Because it's like any community. There are
That's very nicely
conversations that
put, by the
happen.
way.
Say that again?
I said it was very nicely put, by the way.
Well, I just think there's so much that isn't said out there. I mean, and like I say, in all communities, I imagine a bunch of, or a group of women getting together will have a conversation about things that they would not want to hear, but men to be involved in. And I think imagine the same for gay people. I imagine the same for black people. I imagine the same for, you could put any group you can think of. There'll be
definitely.
conversations, there'll be commonalities. Even though we all live very different lives, there are commonalities that exist across the boundaries, of course, but there's specifics when it comes to, or whatever it might be, or gender or religion or sex or whatever it might be. And that was why, it made me think, okay, maybe people need to hear the real conversation. And it might be weird to hear, but maybe it needs to be heard. Because the conversations we have on our show are very honest. We do give a lot of ourselves. I mean, I think it's a rule, and I followed this rule very carefully. And I don't know if I've ever told, I probably have told you the story, but one of my earliest inspirations, people always, and one of the questions I get asked if I do any events is, who inspired you to get into radio? And the truth is, I don't think anybody did. I think I'd listened to the radio growing up. I was always interested in the radio. I never actually wanted to work in radio. I wanted to work in television, but then I realized my eyes didn't work. And so that was not going to really work very well. I wanted to be a cameraman. That's what I always wanted to do. And I went along and tried to do it and said, I can't see this through this thing. And then I realized very quickly, okay, change of career required at the age of 8. And so, I moved on rather quickly. I was always a bit older for my age. And I got into a radio studio, heard my voice in my headphones for the first time, and everyone said that's when I first fell in love. I don't know if that's true or not, but I did enjoy what I heard. I did enjoy the feeling of being able to talk, and no one could tell me to stop. And I could play music, and I could press buttons and play jingles, and I could play with toys. And I thought, this is a lot of fun. This is actually really enjoyable, and it became my thing. And I think I feel that what actually kind of propelled that and gave me, I think, a sense of personality to go with all the experience that I was amassing was I watched a movie called Private Parts. And before you think it's a rude movie, it's not. There are rude elements in it, don't get me wrong. It's not for the kids. But it was about Howard Stern. And Howard Stern, now I didn't know who Howard Stern was. I had no idea. I watched the movie because my grandmother at the time, who was the greatest person in the world when it came to choosing movies for me to watch, she would pick some amazing movies. And she got me into The Sopranos, and she got me into all the mafia movies and stuff. She was great. And she had said to me, this movie called Private Parts. She said, it's not, because my mother thought it was a rude film. She said, it's not a rude film. It's about the radio. He loves the radio. He'll love this film. And I put it on, and I thought it was made up. I didn't know who this guy was, didn't know anything about him, but I thought it was an interesting story. And I related in my early years, especially in my early years of radio. I watched it, and then later in life, watching it again, I saw a lot of what I'd gone through in that, in the sense of I wasn't really the kind of guy that fitted in with all the other radio presenters. I wasn't that kind of guy. I stood out. I was different. Not necessarily in a good way, but I stood out. I couldn't do the format radio. Hey, it's the top 40 with me, Stephen Scott. I wasn't that guy. I couldn't just bring myself to do that. I always felt like a bit of a square peg in a round hole. But I loved the medium. And so I was put on radio at late night. That was where I started. And that was when I really started to develop this ability to, it was a music show, and I immediately decided it was a talk show because I wanted to talk. And I wanted people to call in, and we would have amazing conversations about absolutely nothing. And it was just such a great learning experience. And that's what got me into this whole medium. But one thing that film taught me, was that there was a scene where in the movie, and I think this might have been it may well have happened in real life because the movie was based on his life.
Yeah.
But there was a scene in it where his partner, I don't know if they were married, but his partner got pregnant, and she lost the child. And he went on air the next day and did a bit on the radio about it, pretending that God had contacted the show to say he was a terrible father, and that's the reason that this child was now with God. And it was like, oh my God, what are you doing, Howard? Oh my God, you can't do that. And of course, he goes home that night, and his wife obliterates him, and rightly so, because he had got into the personal life way too close. It got way too close.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of taught me something really important in that, which was give a little of yourself, but not all of yourself. So people hear what I say on the show, and I absolutely tell the truth about what I tell, but we don't make anything up. But I don't give everything away because I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that to my family. There's things that are private. There's things that are personal. There's lots of things going on in my life that I couldn't possibly, and I don't even know if I could talk about them. Not even that I don't want to, I just couldn't talk about it because I don't even know if I'm ready to talk about them. I might down the line. But that's the control aspect of the show I think you have to have when you do these things. Because otherwise, I've seen friends of mine who gave way too much of themselves, especially on talk radio, and it killed them in the end. Because it killed them in the sense of when they left the show, they would try and keep contact with the supposed friends / listeners they had met. And the listeners had moved on. They wanted to hear the next guy who came along. They wanted the guy on the radio. They didn't want this guy hanging around. Who's this guy hanging around? Oh, I'm the guy from the radio. No, you're not. You've left the radio. Where's the new guy? And so the listeners moved on. And so you realize that's what we do. If someone leaves a show, if we're watching a show that we love and we love this character and we think the character's amazing and then they get killed off in the show, we're sad about it for a few days, but then a new character comes in and we just kind of forget about the old character, right? That's how it works. So, you have to realize that. And I think that grounding is really important when you're doing this. And that was why when I set out to do Double Tap, it was never really, it sounds all very big and grand. It just, these were the thoughts that were feeding through my mind. Because I thought we have to take this very seriously because the show does matter to people. I muck around a lot and, I used to call it the dog and pony show and, whatever else I used to call it, because, I'd sit on that show sometimes, yapping away about cheese. And, we'd have very serious people on AMI Audio having very serious conversations about stuff. And we're like, yeah, I don't know. White bread or brown bread? What do you think? And I think we're seriously doing this. But people I think enjoyed it. People enjoy what we do, I think, and I hope they keep coming back for it because we love doing it. But yeah, that was the kind of thinking in my mind was that YouTube could expand that potentially. It could take us. In the end, where I got to was, we could actually open this up and bring this conversation to life, and bring the honesty that we bring to people who maybe need to hear it, maybe need to hear some real blind people actually having a conversation. And sometimes it'll be difficult. Yeah. And, I get calling sighted people sighted zombies probably doesn't put me in their best books. But, I have to be honest about things. There are challenges and there's things we need to talk about.
All right, folks, that's going to conclude episode 133 of Technically Working, featuring Stephen Scott of Double Tap. You can check out Double Tap with Stephen Scott and Sean Priest daily, Monday through Friday. You can search for Double Tap in your podcast player or on YouTube, or check out the website, www.doubletaponair.com. You can also follow us. Michael is on Mastodon as Payon, Payown, at dragonscave.space. You can follow me, Damashe, Damashe, at technically.social. And the better follow on Technically Social is our bot, TW, at technically.social. Find out when the show is posted and other random things that get posted periodically. You can also interact with us on Mastodon by using the hashtag Technically Working, and we, of course, appreciate it if you capitalize the T and the W. Big thanks to our tip jar supporters. for continuing to support us. And shout out to everybody who listens. We truly appreciate every single one of you, and do us the favor of sharing the show. You can also send us feedback via email, feedback@technicallyworking.show. All right, thank you. And again, this has been episode 133.